Hello everyone, my name is Shay Farrell, and today we will be discussing social media and its impact on student engagement within a secondary education classroom. So the title of my work is A New Classroom Etiquette, Social Media and Student Engagement. So this is kind of a culmination of my own observations and analysis of my own research over a 7-week period at Dr. Finney J. Fisher Middle School in Malden, South Carolina, as well as an analysis of other research that I have found on the subject by other educators or professionals within the field. So again, this is kind of a culmination of the work. So before we begin, I just would like to kind of outline the order of events here. So today we will go over the background of the research. We will go over the research questions, my hypothesis, the prior to the lesson, results of the lesson, and finally the future goals of this research. So kind of how that will propel us forward in social media use within the classroom or educational settings. So before we begin, I think to fully have an understanding of what this research kind of proposes or the reason behind the research, I think a bit of background information is necessary. So as you can see here, a statistic. According to a 2018 study, 62% of students aged 13 to 17 spend more than 4 hours a day on social media. 29% of these students aged 13 to 17 admit to using social media for nearly 8 hours a day. So those are pretty alarming numbers. 8 hours a day for roughly 30% of students aged 13 to 17. That is a very significant amount of time, especially when you think of it in a school setting. School is roughly 7 to 8 hours a day, so who knows whether or not they're really on social media throughout the school day. So my kind of thought after reading this was, well, why not utilize social media in a educational setting, in a classroom setting? If they're going to use their cell phones or their computers and go on social media, why not kind of grasp that and utilize that to benefit the classroom as well as their overall engagement? I believe that this topic is very culturally relevant, as we're kind of seeing in these very unprecedented and unfortunate times with this pandemic. Social media and similar platforms or applications and their use is very, very important. They're paramount in order to kind of increase learning or continue learning and propel students forward. So I think it is a very culturally relevant topic and something that many educators kind of debate about. A lot of educators think that social media or really just technology in general can be a distraction to many students, and that could be true. But there's also many who argue that social media and its use and proper use and implementation in a classroom can truly benefit the student. So I think, to put it simply, I feel that most students, they kind of seek technology. They want to use technology, especially in the classroom. It's what they're interested in. It's what they know. It's what they've been kind of using at home since they were born. This is one of the first generations to be born with the iPhone or with the newest tablet or the new computer and things like that. So they've been raised with this technology. They've been raised with social media. So again, why not kind of use that to benefit their education as well as benefit educators and kind of make our lives easier? So all of this has kind of led me to a few questions. The first, can social media be used in a secondary education classroom to improve student engagement? So in other words, if we use social media and kind of gain the interest of these students, will their overall engagement with the assignment or with the work or with just the class in general, will we see an improvement in that? The next question, is social media a friend or foe? So that's kind of what I just touched on a few seconds ago, but is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? That's kind of like the main argument that both sides to this topic have kind of been debating over the years, especially in more recent years. So these are the questions that kind of help to drive this, the research that I've conducted in the analysis of my the professionals that I've observed and other educators. So all of this has led to my hypothesis. So my hypothesis is, through implementation of social media in a secondary education classroom, the educator will observe a higher degree of student engagement. So in other words, excuse me, through proper implementation of social media and its use in the classroom, students will be more engaged in class. They will be more involved. They will want to continue learning. They will want to continue to utilize social media and kind of just use this technology in classroom in order to become more engaged. So I think that students will be more engaged if we use social media in an educational setting. So prior to my own observations in my own classroom at Dr. Finney's A.J. Fisher Middle School, as we touched on earlier, it was important to kind of form a baseline. So myself and my co-op teacher, Miss Taylor, we were in her 8th grade social studies class. So before we administered my social media driven lesson, we kind of observed like your normal lesson, your classic PowerPoint notes, the boring lesson. I'm just kidding. But so we formed this system where we were able just to put tallies next to the students' names who we considered to be off task or unengaged or kind of disengaged from the class. So this kind of meant that these students, when they got out of their seat, we gave them a tally next to their name. When they spoke out of turn, we gave them a tally next to their name. When they spoke to their friend, or they just simply were off task, or when we went on to see that they were on a different website than they should have been, and things like that. So we just kept a steady tally. So these are the findings from the tallies. So students prior to the lesson, 26% of them were unengaged from the class. So that means that these students were found off task multiple times throughout the 50-minute period. And then roughly 74% were considered to be engaged. So this is kind of our own assessment that Ms. Taylor and I formed in order to judge whether or not these students were on task or engaged within the class. All right, so then next, after we kind of formed the baseline, we came up with a lesson. So I found this application. It's called Fakebook, and it's kind of the play on words of Facebook, obviously. But so this lesson, I thought that it would be very kind of interesting for the students. So the lesson in general, I assigned students a historical character to create. And this historical character came from the Civil War time period or the antebellum period that we were really in. So each student got this historical figure, and they were to create basically a mimic or mock Facebook page. So this Facebook page, it required them to find images of these people. It required them to have a friend group or friends list, excuse me, or have make different posts about historical events that were kind of occurring at that time period. And so I just wanted to see how the students would interact with an application like this and how they would kind of like it, to put it simply, really. So I introduced Fakebook to the students, gave them the application. I showed them my own Fakebook that I made about one of the characters. And then Miss Taylor and I just kind of observed if they were on task again using the same method of the tally marks, kind of seeing if they were on task or off task. And so I think kind of throughout the lesson, just in general, I think myself and Ms. Taylor, we kind of observed that the students seemed to really just be kind of, I guess, corresponding and working with the social media platform fairly well. They seemed to know what they were doing. They were on task. They were working very well. And we were very impressed before we really even observed or took down the notes or analyzed the data that we've collected. So some of the names that we'd given these students to kind of research, they were Abraham Lincoln, it was John Brown, Dred Scott, John C. Calhoun, the Grimke sisters, just some kind of characters like that, pretty prominent during the time period, especially in the South Carolina. All right, so after we administered the lesson, like I said, we'd had our tallies, and we kind of observed that. And then finally, we provided the students with a short survey, kind of asking them how they thought that they did or how they felt that the lesson went in general. So here is a copy of the survey that we gave them. I put it on a different page because it was kind of tough to see on the poster board. But so these were the questions. Number one, you could just check yes or no. Or that's what I instructed the students to do. So number one, I felt more engaged when using social media platform in the classroom. Number two, I enjoyed using social media in the classroom. Three, I would like to continue to use social media in the classroom. And four, I felt that I have a better understanding of my historical person that I researched. So those are the questions that we asked them and kind of where we gathered this data from. So of the 110 students that we have over the 5 classes during the day, these are the numbers that we found. So for that first question, 84% of students felt more engaged when using social media. So I thought that was a very good number. That was a high number. That was kind of what I was hoping for. The next one, 95% enjoyed using social media in the classroom. I think that number right there is very telling. 95% of these students really enjoyed using this technology. They enjoyed using social media. The number three, 89% would like to use it again. I think that's also a very telling number. So nearly 90% of the students that we had, they wanted to use social media again. They found that it helped them learn, and they wanted to continue to use it. And then lastly, 91% felt that they had a better understanding of the historical figure. And that's the ultimate goal of any lesson, right? Is to ensure that students are learning and to ensure that they are continuing to gain knowledge and become a better student. So then here we have the results from our educators' observations. So these are our own observations based on the tally mark system that we have made. So as we can see, so 11% of students are unengaged or disengaged. Still a little higher than I would have liked in my own classroom, but I'm still learning. But 89% were considered to be engaged. So as we can see, compared to prior to the lesson, there's a 15% decrease in disengagement or unengagement, excuse me. So overall, students are more engaged and were more engaged when using social media in this particular case. So after this research was conducted, I think it would be fair to say that my hypothesis was true in this case, where the students were much more engaged in the classroom when utilizing social media. The main goal of this was to incorporate social media multiple times throughout. It was supposed to be a 12-week period of my student teaching, but unfortunately due to the pandemic, it was cut down to roughly 6 or 7 weeks. So I only got to use the one, and that was Facebook. But after the Facebook, we had planned that we were going to use an Instagram, a Twitter, and even a TikTok, which the kids were very, very excited to use, especially my 8th graders. So kind of after analyzing all this research and the findings, I believe that the future goals of this research is to kind of just continue to grow with technology. As you can see, so it says, as technology continues to evolve and contemporary issues continue to arise, it is important to utilize social media and similar applications within the classroom. I hope to have a sense of relatability within my classroom to help the students learn in a more meaningful way. I think that is the ultimate goal of all classrooms, is to ensure that students are learning both socially and academically and continuing to evolve with time and with the issues and just the things that are going on and the cultural relatableness, I guess, at the end. So I think all in all, the future goals of this work and research is just to kind of show that through proper use and implementation, social media can be a learning tool for many students. They can be more engaged. They can learn more or learn without even knowing that they're learning. So I think that social media, all in all, can be an excellent tool within a secondary education classroom. So I believe that concludes my presentation. I want to thank you all for being here and giving me your time and attention. I really, really appreciate it. This has been an awesome experience. So I hope you all stay safe. And again, I really appreciate you being here with me. Thank you and have a good day.